Welcome back, everyone. In today's video, we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite topic, suffering on psychedelics. I'm going to make the case here that sometimes that can be an incredibly important, valuable, useful thing, as much as that sucks. So if you're someone who struggles with difficult trips or someone who's afraid of difficult trips, you may want to check this out. This may be useful to you. All right, let's talk about it. And just really quick before we go down the rabbit hole of this particular conversation, first of all, just a warm welcome to you if you're new to the channel. Hello, my name is Dave. I'm a coach. I'm a hypnotherapist. I work with people in the psychedelic space around their personal development, healing, transformational process. I'm a trained guide amongst many other roles that I carry, and this is kind of my jam to talk about this stuff. So if you're interested in this topic, do please consider subscribing to the channel. Clicking on the subscribe and the bell icon if you want to be notified about it. If this particular video resonates for you, do me a favor and give a thumbs up to let the algorithm know to spread it to others, because I do want to grow the channel, and I'm terrible at self-promotion because that's not really my orientation as a person. Last thing I'll say is if something here really strikes a chord for you in a positive way, or something you want to kind of challenge back on, either way, please leave me your thoughts down below in the comments section. I really always value getting your guys' take on things because it helps me to understand better how these videos are landing and connecting for you. With all that being said, now that's out of the way, let's talk about, why sometimes difficult experiences can be of a lot of value. So I want to tell you a little story about a viewer of the channel who's probably watching right now, and she will know who she is if she hears this story, if she sees this video. There's a client that I have that I've been working with for a while now who not too long ago, a few months back, decided to take some mushrooms at a dose that should have been kind of a low kind of intensity experience, and for whatever reason they hit her in a way that was much stronger than she anticipated, and she ended up getting way more than she bargained for with mushrooms. It was an incredibly intense experience for her, and long story short, she ended up having a very, very difficult experience. Somewhere in the midst of that, she had the wherewithal to email me and say, hey, I could use a lifeline. I'm a bit out of sorts here. This is a bit much for me. And offer to sit with her through it and show up for her and support her. And we got her safely to the other side, if you will. And I bring up this point not just to say, something about myself or something about her, but to mention, first of all, that, psychedelics are inherently unpredictable. And even when we're taking a medicine at a certain dose that we think we know what the dose is going to be, there are a lot of different variables there that can really lead us to end up having overwhelming experiences, intense experiences in a good way, intense experiences in a bad way, and really difficult experiences. And I want to talk about difficulty of experiences and how this can be valuable, because, sooner or later, I think if you're engaging with psychedelics, and by the way, I mean, psilocybin, LSD, mescaline, I'm not talking MDMA here, not necessarily talking ketamine here, you're likely to have difficult experience if you're doing these classical psychedelics. Now, in the case of my client that I've been working with, after she came down and we checked in about it on our next session, she reflected on it, and we ended up kind of unpacking a whole new level of insight and clarity about the pattern of the issues she's been dealing with. So through that difficult experience, it really helped her to hone in and really clearly recognize and no longer kind of dismiss or be unsure about kind of the pattern going on for her, and it became very vivid. It became the structure of what it is that she's dealing with became very, very clear to her, and ultimately, in the big picture, that empowered her to know, and empowered both of us, empowered me too, to know how to work with the issue and how to address it more closely, more accurately, more deeply, and support her, more precisely with what she needed. And this is really one of the major values in difficult experiences. So I think there's a few kind of big benefits to difficult experiences. I feel like throwing in, before I get into what those benefits are, that in my recent guide training, one of the things that they teach you is that sometimes the person just needs to suffer. Sometimes a person just needs to sit there, lay there, whatever, and go through it. And your job as a guide is not to interrupt that, not to intervene, not to save them from their distress and overwhelm and fear and triggers, but instead to just be a loving, supportive, patient presence that allows them, that gives them the permission to be there, to be suffering, to be struggling, to be overwhelmed, to be challenged, right? And that sometimes, really, if we step in too soon as a guide to help shift that and help someone get kind of unplugged from this cycle of struggle or suffering or discomfort, we could be doing them a huge disservice. There can be huge learning about oneself, about our issues, about our capabilities and capacities, about our own strength and resilience. There can be huge learning about, what it is that's really at the heart of things for us. There can be huge learning about, how much fear or overwhelm or discomfort we can tolerate, right? And as much as it sucks to have to go through a really difficult experience in order to have that learning, sometimes that learning is more valuable in the big picture, in the long run in your life, is more empowering and more valuable than if a guide or a therapist were to try to intervene and help you kind of relieve that tension and that stress and that fear, right? So this is one of the tricky aspects of being a guide, is having the insight and the wisdom to know when to allow people to be with their own suffering and to be hands off, to not intervene, and to make that okay too, to make that within the bounds of the work you're doing together, so that it's not just like, okay, we're just gonna make you safe and happy and healed and protect you from, because life is hard, life is traumatic. Trauma will happen to all of us at some point in our lives, right? Life is, even when it's not traumatic, challenging, difficult, overwhelming, confusing, stressful, painful, and I think of this almost as like a painter or a musician builds a repertoire of, let's say in a musician's case, a musician builds a repertoire of vocabulary of licks and scales and chords and melodies and ways of reharmonizing things and all this stuff, right? Musicians have a repertoire. They have a skill set that they develop to be in different musical situations and know what to do. I think that's true for everybody when it comes to navigating life. We need to develop our repertoire, and part of that repertoire needs to be about how to navigate difficult experiences, challenging experiences, heavy moments, sad moments, moments of grief, moments of disappointment, moments of pain, right? How do we navigate this stuff? This is a huge part of what we need to be developing to be a well-rounded human being that is adaptable to different situations, that is ultimately that feels more safe in our own skin, right? So some examples of where that's useful are kind of embedded that in that little riff I just said there. But, some examples would be, you want to grow your capacity to tolerate more difficulty, more uncomfort, more negative emotion without it overloading you, right? You want to grow your capacity to be able to look at the content of your negative emotions and unpack that rather than just be in reaction to it and like, I don't want to deal with this, I don't want to deal with this. Go, what's here? What's the positive intention underneath this pain or fear or sadness or struggle, right? There's insight. There's resources there if you're willing to look and unpack it. Right? So working with that rather than avoiding it, right? There's real value in learning how to, again, discover how resilient you actually are, right? Discover how adaptable you are. And again, like I said in the example of my client here, discover your capacity to get clear with what's actually going on for you. So sometimes these difficult experiences really kind of, highlight the structure of the problem in such a way that we're like, I get it. Okay, now I really understand what's really at the root of this for me, right? And if you weren't to allow yourself to go through that experience, you may never get that insight. Now, I think the other side of the coin here, to be fair and to be safe and to create like a message of safety for you guys here, the other side of the coin there is that we have, what you can think of in trauma therapy as a window of tolerance, right? So we have kind of an area of bandwidth in the middle between, let's say, totally numb and dissociated on one level and total overload and panic attack on the other side. We have a window of tolerance in the middle that where we can, be dealing with an issue but comfortably address it, right? Now, a lot of times these difficult experiences are kind of at the edge of our window of tolerance. We're right at that edge where we're so close to having a panic attack or totally dissociating and spacing out and going numb and losing track of everything. But hopefully you can use these difficult experiences to stay within your window of tolerance and work with that. And by doing that, even expand your window of tolerance so that you can tolerate a little more discomfort in either direction. What you want to be paying attention for is going outside your window of tolerance. If you hit a full-blown panic attack where you're having a meltdown and nothing makes sense and you can't work with any of this and it's all too much, then you're outside your window of tolerance. And either you need to bring yourself back in your window of tolerance, or that's kind of, a situation where I think it might be appropriate to consider taking a benzo or something like that and softening the edges of the anxiety and taking the pressure off. I do think there is a line you can cross with psychedelics and with trauma work in general, healing work in general, where you're too overloaded. It's not productive to stay in that place. It can be too much. It can actually even re-traumatize you and compound your traumatic response afterwards rather than relieve it. And you're really flirting with that going either way on you once you're outside your window of tolerance. So if that starts to happen, that's really what you want to be paying attention to. And that threshold, for a lot of us, we don't know where that threshold is. And this is kind of the trick with, working with, challenging experiences, is that we don't know exactly often where that line is, where once I cross it, I'm like done, like I'm fried. I can't, that like I'm going to have a full panic attack here, or I'm like going to shut down and black out here, that kind of a thing. We don't know where that line is, right? And so you kind of want to skirt the edge and see if you can get a sense of maybe if you're getting close to that line and where that is. But again, if it's too far outside the bounds, then that might be an appropriate time, I think, personal opinion, and this is controversial amongst guides and psychedelic therapists. I think there is a time and a place to reach for the parachute, reach for the benzo or what have you, and calm things down, right? Because then once you're back inside your window of tolerance, you can, with a little more safety in your body, you can continue working with these difficult themes. But with no safety in your body, at a certain point, it's not productive. So there's a dance here. It's tricky. This is the nuance. This is the art, part of the art of guiding and sitting with people or doing therapeutic work with people, is really paying attention to that line for someone, because a person may not know their own line there, right? So with that said, if you're able to be with the difficulty, and it might be really difficult, but you're still within your window of tolerance, sometimes there's value in that. Sometimes it's worth dealing with, and can be a big revelation, can really show you some really profound stuff. Sometimes we've been avoiding, like, let's say, if you want to think of it in terms of shadow work, I'm not crazy about that term, but just roughly speaking as a concept, let's imagine there's this whole area of yourself you have been avoiding, not exploring, not willing to deal with. And maybe there's some really personal, painful stuff there for you, but maybe there's also some universal, kind of stuff like existential terror, existential angst, these kinds of things that all human beings feel in their nervous system to some degree if you kind of really feel into things and ride that all the way down, right? So sometimes engaging that stuff or realizing that stuff is there, getting a bit of an ability to sit with that, be present with that, to feel that, to allow that to be there, can be deeply, deeply empowering. And I would say, tangentially, if we're looking at like meditation and spiritual practice, that's part of that world too, right? Like, as much as spirituality is often about light and bliss and love and oneness and feeling deeply connected to all of the universe and deeply resourced, there's also terror and existential fear and existential pain, transpersonal pain. That's not about your pain. It's about the collective pain of all of humanity. Stuff like that. Some really big, deep, challenging stuff that comes up on the spiritual path as well. And so you want to be working at your ability to work with that as part of a broad spectrum. So my concern for people is, ultimately that we don't get stuck in one mode or one domain, right? I think it's important to be full spectrum, to have a full range of motion in your being. I think that's a big part of what it means to be a healthy, high functioning, happy, balanced human being, right? And so this means being able to work with pain, being able to work with challenges, being able to work with stress, fear, overwhelm, grief, skillfully. That also means not being stuck there or fixated on that, but also being able to work with lightness, bliss, joy, peace, freedom, love, well-being, empowerment, again, having a full range of motion between all the different states that your being is capable of accessing, and having skillfulness with all of it, really. I think that's really what we're after in a big way here. So anyways, just thought I'd share my thoughts on that here with you guys. This is an important topic because so often, psychedelic therapy is just talked about in terms of, this healing, remedial sense of helping people resolve issues, which is wonderful. One of the things they don't talk about is that sometimes the lesson or the thing you need along the way, the tool you need along the way, is to sit with the hard stuff, right? So I'm not all about this. This isn't my core message. I'm not trying to bang this drum overwhelmingly, but I think in the context of all the other things I'm saying here on the channel, this is an important piece. So take that for what you will. And if you're someone who's dealt with difficult experiences, or if you end up having a difficult experience, hopefully this message will serve you in that sense. All right. Much love to you guys. Take care. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you all a lot, and I'll see you soon.